Hey guys, welcome back to Cult of Film. I wanted to wind down our series of videos for the Halloween viewing guide with this one, and this is just me being indulgent uh, on some films that probably they're only celebrated by fans. They're celebrated by cinephiles. They have a cult following. These aren't films that I think a lot of mainstream moviegoers are going to be familiar with, let alone sit down and watch. And it's a shame because they're fun, they're really beautifully shot, they're interesting, and they're just entertaining. Um, I'm talking about the Gates of Hell trilogy by the late great Italian master of horror Lucio Fulci. For those of you that aren't familiar, Lucio Fulci was an Italian filmmaker who he's probably best known for his horror films, but he did way more than horror. He did a sci-fi film called what was it? Warriors from Rome 2072. He did Silver Spur. Some westerns. The guy, he did comedies, but what he's really probably best known for are his series of horror films, and especially what's called the Gates of Hell trilogy. And that's three movies made between I think 1979 through 1981. It's City of the Living Dead 1980, The Beyond 1981. Those of you that are lovers of Tarantino is responsible for this movie being restored, The Beyond. And the third being House by the Cemetery, also 1981. Fulcio and his team were cranking in the late 70s, early 80s. The amount of movies they put out is really impressive. Now, there's a way to watch Italian horror if you're used to Hereditary and The Exorcist and Halloween and A Nightmare on Elm Street. You kind of need a primer, and you need to be briefed before you watch Italian horror, because when a friend of mine about 5, 6 years ago introduced me to Lucio Fulci and to Italian horror, he didn't brief me at all, and so it was kind of rough pill going down. One thing you need to know about Italian horror, whether it's the Gates of Hell trilogy, anything Fulci did, Dario Argento, who's I love a lot too, they're all dubbed. And why are these movies dubbed? It's not because a lot of these movies were really just intended as pure cash grabs to capitalize on already established franchises. Fulci's Zombie 2, what we know as Zombie, was merely a cash grab to make money off of the George Romero movies. If we call it Zombie 2, people won't know if it's a sequel to Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, all those, and City of the Living Dead. It's sort of in that same vein. So these movies were not really intended to be great works of art. It was just like, okay, how can we be shocking and atmospheric and fun and make some money? That still doesn't explain why they're dubbed. I used to think, oh, okay, it's because these movies are a quick cash grab and they're not going to mic anybody because they're just going to dub it into French, English, German, Farsi, Arabic, whatever. But that wasn't the reason. All these Italian films are dubbed because there was a fascist era law for Italian film. So when Benito Mussolini was in charge of Italy, there was a law that said that you put the audio in later because they never wanted a film to be made that might have undermined the fascist cause or the fascist regime or the ideas of fascism. So they basically would shoot these entire films with no audio, which seems insane. And then they would go back, call all the actors back, or not even other, it could be other actors, and have them re-record all the dialogue. Insane, right? Fascists, they want to control everything. But this law stayed on the books long after Mussolini was gone. And that brings us to the early 80s with the Gates of Hell trilogy. So you'll have a mixture of some English-speaking actors with Italian actors that are speaking English, but everybody kind of has to be dubbed. So the dubbing, some of it's okay, some of it's not so great. That can take a lot of people out of watching these movies. So I'm just telling you, take that with a grain of salt. You should still see these movies. They're a lot of fun. It's some of the most incredible aesthetic, atmospheric horror I've ever seen. Once I got over some of stuff like the dubbing, and yeah, so understand that going in. The other part of it is a lot of these movies narratively are not that tight. They'll have subplots that might start in the beginning that don't ever get resolved. It can be a very thin veneer of narrative that's sort of just strung together by set pieces and, just sort of vague ideas and concepts. Some maybe okay dialogue, maybe some not great dialogue. Again, I think that these movies are worth watching. So many of the people who I admire, like Tarantino, like Jordan Peele, Carpenter, so many of these great filmmakers have watched these films, and they've been able to pull the good away from them because they are Italian films. They're beautifully shot. The level of craft, some of the practical special effects, the framing, the composition, the color, the staging are just beautifully done because Italians are some of these stylish people in the world, and that doesn't stop even at their horror movies. And so that's why I think these movies are really good. But Gates of Hell trilogy, it's three movies. The first one being City of the Living Dead, which is about a woman played by Catriona McCall, who is in all three movies. And this isn't a trilogy in the respect that one movie is connected to and follows the other. It's not the same cast of characters through each movie, even though Catriona McCall is the female lead in all three of them. It's basically three films that deal with people that are put into a situation where they are encountering a gate of hell opening. So again, it's they're loosely tied by the concept, not necessarily by character. In City of the Living Dead, Catriona McCall plays Mary Woodhouse, who she's kind of a psychic medium, and she witnesses the self-deletion of a Catholic priest named Father Thomas. As a result of this priest's self-deletion, it triggers basically the slow opening of a portal to hell. And Mary and her friend Peter Bell, played by Christopher George, who is kind of an investigator, as well as I'm trying to remember the guy's name, a guy who's a psychotherapist. They all kind of team up and are investigating these weird happenings that are occurring in the city of Dunwich. That you see zombies slowly sort of appearing. You have this now sort of demonic, ghostly Father Thomas appearing and just doing all manner of terrible things to people that see him. It's sort of a slow power up for Father Thomas, and it's sort of a slow bleed of these zombies sort of coming to life and wreaking havoc. And it's really up to Mary, Peter, and company to figure out what's going on, to maybe try to reverse it, try to save the people they know from it. And it's just so aesthetic. It's so beautifully shot. The atmosphere is there. Again, this brings me back to the times of being a kid and watching these, B movies on local television, but really just being impressed by how sort of stylish and cool they are. Again, not because of the great dialogue or the, close continuity of the narrative. There are scenes in this movie, and all of them in the Gates of Hell trilogy, that are really, really graphic. Lucio Fulci really went for the throat, no pun intended, on these. And so if you're somebody who is a bit squeamish, and I'm squeamish on certain things, he spends time on some of these kills. So, word of the wise, be warned, dubbing, some pretty graphic kills. But that said, it kind of just feels almost like a nightmarish fever dream in the way that Dario Argento's early films did, Suspiria, Inferno, and the like. So many of Fulci's films, especially the Gates of Hell trilogy, like City of the Living Dead, it just feels like a fever dream nightmare. And it's fun. Again, it's getting together with friends, making food and drinks, and just really enjoying. These guys were just having fun. It's like, let's try this, let's try that. And Catriona McCall, the actors, they really sell it. These are serious actors, even if they didn't have the greatest script. It's still fun. It's still interesting. The ending is a little underwhelming, if I'm being honest. I don't care about that. Again, the first time I watched it, I'm like, what? Really? But I've come to love the movie so much that it doesn't matter. And the ending still kind of works. It's almost sort of an ambiguous ending in that respect, but still worth watching. City of the Living Dead, the first chapter of Gates of Hell trilogy. That leads us into the second film, The Beyond. The Beyond has a massive cult following, even more than City of the Living Dead. The Beyond is one of Tarantino's favorites. And some years ago, it was Tarantino who helped get a finally restored version available in North America, because forever we only had this severely edited version of The Beyond that was they removed the original score, which that's something else I should mention. All these films, City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, and House by the Cemetery, have these incredible scores from Fabio Frizzi and his crew. I love these scores so much. I want to use them in my own films. They're just so good. The Beyond really is sort of like the big favorite of these three films. And again, Tarantino worked to restore it, restoring it was known as Seven Doors of Death, but we now have it, restored and available as The Beyond. Again, we have the return of Catriona MacColl as, let me go back here, cast. Plays Liza Merrill, who she's living in New York City, and she inherits let me fix this. Sorry, guys. She inherits a hotel in Louisiana, and just like, okay, fine, I'll go for it. We find out that the hotel was a site of a murder of a warlock back in the 20s, and as a result of her getting a hold of this place, weird things again start happening, like every haunted house does. But it's not just about the haunted house. She ends up meeting this blind girl named Emily, played by Cynthia Montreal, who she's so spooky and weird, but also compelling. There's a slow sort of unfolding of the mysteries of this hotel and what's going on there. Liza, again, Catriona MacColl, she teams up with David Warbeck. David Warbeck plays Dr. John McCabe. David Warbeck, back in the day, was actually under consideration to play James Bond. David Warbeck is a New Zealand actor. Catriona MacColl was English, British, and they're really good together. They're really great. They even the moments that seem a little groany, because again, these films are like City of the Living Dead. They're sort of considered B movie status, grindhouse films. They really sell it, and that really helps the film. On top of the fact that just how the supernatural weirdness unfolds, how people are slowly sort of being either possessed, or people who become zombies, or they become overtaken by this evil force in this movie. It's just beautifully done. The Beyond it really is a standalone cult classic in its own right, but it's so much fun. You can see most of these films. I believe The Beyond, most of Fulci stuff is available on Tubi, and it's always streaming somewhere. If not Shudder, then free on Tubi. I think sometimes it pops up on Prime. But I love The Beyond. It has influenced a lot of horror. It's one of those films where you'll watch, and especially stuff that's popped up lately, you will see influences of The Beyond in a lot of new horror. So absolutely watch this one. It's everyone will say it's the best of the bunch. I think it is probably the strongest, but it all depends on what you like. The last one is House by the Cemetery. This is the one that is probably, it doesn't get the love that it should. House by the Cemetery, someone will say it's the weakest entry. I don't think that's true at all. I think it is an absolutely kick-ass haunted house ghost story. It's probably the most coherent of the three entries in the Gates of Hell trilogy. There are a couple loose ends that aren't, things that just aren't explained, just weirdness that go on in the movie with the characters. There's a nanny character that sort of pops up, and we don't know. We kind of have an idea why, but it's and then she sort of moved off. Doesn't matter. The house is creepy. The family's relatable and believable. The kills are not overly gratuitous. The score is amazing. The mixture of exteriors that were shot in New England and interiors done on sets in Rome, which were super beautiful and spooky and beautiful, just really make for an incredible ghost story. And yeah, if I were you, again, it's dubbed. Some of the narrative stuff is a little weird. Not everything gets resolved, but it's just sort of meant to be a fun ghost story. It's got a powerful resolution. Both the Beyond and House by the Cemetery have great endings. I think they have satisfying endings. City of the Living Dead, I can't honestly say that it has a great ending. It just is what it is. Still a great film, but the Beyond and House by the Cemetery wrap things up in interesting ways, in ways that are more sophisticated than these films are usually given credit for. Again, they're considered schlock, they're considered B movies, they're considered, blood exploitation, I guess you could call it. But the craftsmanship that went into it by these really great Italian masters is what keeps these movies, I think, going in people's minds. There was a showing in LA a couple of years ago of City of the Living Dead, and it was almost standing room only. Like, it was packed. So they can't be all that bad. And these are people. Some people will say, "Oh, it's just people getting together to watch a cult movie and making fun of it." I know that there are people that are, but the rest of us are just marveling at just the production, the process, the visuals, the overall presentation of it. And it's perfect for Halloween. It's not super serious. It's pretty to watch. It gets the job done. And so that's why I highly, highly, highly recommend the Gates of Hell trilogy. Don't bother with looking at Rotten Tomatoes. These movies all have really low scores, but you now know going in, okay, I'm not going in and watching Hereditary, The Exorcist, going in to watch The Witch. So many of these movies that I've mentioned before, it's not An American Werewolf in London. It's not 28 Days Later. No. These are movies that were really intended to make a cash grab at the time. They hired some really talented folks that did really good work in it, even if the scripts weren't strong, even if the overall execution isn't up to par with what we would expect. Watch these movies; they're just fun. So yeah, that's sort of my I guess the bookend to these videos. Other honorable mentions in Italian horror outside of the Gates of Hell trilogy. I'm going to do a review of Lucio Fulci's The Psychic, which came before all of these films in 1977, also known as Seven Notes in Black. I think it's his best film. I highly, highly, highly recommend you watch it. It's currently streaming on Shudder, and I think it's known as Seven Notes in Black on Tubi. Also, anything from Argento, from the mid-70s through the early 80s. Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Deep Red, Suspiria, Inferno, Tenebrae. These are all excellent, excellent movies. Fun, atmospheric, stylish horror that is worth your time. But yeah, Gates of Hell trilogy. Just go have fun and watch them. They're entertaining, and they're just cool. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. If there's anything I missed, if there's any other Fulci stuff maybe you guys want to see reviewed, or horror, non-horror you'd like to see reviewed, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.